Dan and Corey here, welcoming you into Libservative.
The great fundamental issue now before our people. We, the people, cannot turn back.
All right, welcome in to Libservative, the show that uses the nonsense of the news cycle to foster political and cultural literacy. He, of course, is Corey Walsh.
He's Dan Griffin.
What a week it's been, Corey. I'm actually upset about tonight's show. Part of me didn't even want to do it because of the giant.
Why, Dan? Why are you upset?
Because of the giant elephant in the room, which we'll get to. Donald Trump announcing, and you'll find out why I don't even really care about that. Like, I don't really have any feelings or emotions either way towards the fact that Donald Trump is going to be running for president. I would venture to guess you probably don't either, but we'll get there. We have our reasons to discuss this. We're going to try and take it a little bit of a different direction. We are going to take a look at something that we kind of put off for, I would say, a few weeks now, which was this article by Emily Oster in the Atlantic over Halloween having to do with COVID amnesty. And I think one of the reasons we put this off, or at least one of the reasons I wanted to put this off, is because I wanted some time to cool down and really consider what she was saying in that piece, because there's a lot of reactionary nonsense to it. We're going to talk about Ukraine updates. It's a deadly two-person murder in what would that be? Eastern Poland. And we're feeling a little bit better about that. And the police need policing again, Corey Walsh. But before we get to any of that, tell the people where they can find us.
Okay.
We weren't even ready for that.
Libservative Podcast is found on all social media and podcast platforms. Our website is podpage.com/Libservative, and we can be found at Libservative on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Instagram and Twitter at LibservativePod. And you can find our transcripts at libservativepodcast.wordpress.com. Our TikTok videos can be found at Libservative Podcast, and you can reach out directly at libservativepod@gmail.com. Subscribe today.
And I've got some. We're writing some good scripts for some of these.
Yeah, we haven't really done a monologue in a while.
But anyway, what have you been up to recently, Corey? What are you drinking? What have you been watching, listening to, reading?
Oh, you know what I've been listening to.
That's true. I absolutely do. You've been listening to the quote-unquote new Beastie Boys.
Yeah, and that's not said lightly.
I've ever heard in my life.
What'd you say?
The whitest thing I've heard in my life.
Joey Valance and Bray. These two guys that I was actually looking at, they made it onto Ellen and stuff like that. But these two guys, they're the way they carry themselves, their music videos, and the way they sound. It's only a matter of time before Rick Rubin gets his hands on them, because they literally sound like the Beastie Boys. And it is a scratch or an itch that I did not know needed scratching. I've been just pumped listening to these guys the last 2 days. I'm like, it's one of the, when you find a new band and you're like, well, when the fuck are they coming out with new music? Why haven't they done it yet? When is their tour? What the fuck you mean they're on tour in Europe? Why aren't they here? I looked into all of it, and
it's like a boil. It's like a boil that you found in your underass. You didn't know it was there, and then once you found it, you had to scratch the shit out of that boil. Had to be had. Had to be had.
It's not something that I personally can be like, oh yeah, it's just like that. But sometimes I do get this scratch in my back that I can't reach because of all the metal in my arms.
You're not old enough to have the under ass boils yet.
I guess not.
I just turned 34, so it's
what do I got, a year?
I mean, I still find pimples in weird. I find pimples in weird areas. I wouldn't say any boils per se, but definitely some. Where'd that come from? Kind of pimples in weird areas.
I must have ate too much chocolate.
Oh man!
And then been listening to them. Just been watching Mad Men, trying to just knock that out. But in the venture of everything else I'm doing in life, it's hard to come by. I dangerously started picking up Civilization on the Xbox again, and it's not good for anybody.
No, it's not. I'm sorry. I'm over here just making my first pour because I'm doing.
Oh,
Something.
nice. I'm gonna pour myself some old Basil Hayden's that I got sitting right here.
I'm doing something interesting tonight. I showed you before we started the show, Corey. I've got like 3 bottles of bourbons and ryes and whiskeys here that have like 1 pour left in them. So I decided let's just mow through them tonight. I'm actually starting with the Basil Hayden's. I've also got the Woodford Reserve Double Oaked.
Nice.
And also the Bullet 95 Rye, which I will be picking up another bottle of because I did not realize how low I was on this. But let's start with the Basil Hayden's.
Is that the Basil Hayden's I got you?
No, this is
nice.
I just finished that one.
Oh, Chris is here. Look, Chris agrees with me. He said that Joey Valance and Bray are fire. It's Conscious Society. If you get a chance, he is a small apparel manufacturer here in the great old Mitten, and he's selling shirts that have a good cause, and they give money to societal causes. And we're looking at doing some work with them
that help foster political and cultural literacy.
So stay tuned. Well, that's not his tag. You can't just force that on the guy.
You're gonna make him foster.
We're gonna make him do it.
It's either that or you're going to Gitmo, Chris. We're sending you to Gitmo.
Actually, I have one of his cards right here. Check that out. Conscious Society.
Not yet a partner, but we're working on it.
We're working. It's just we gotta just cross some T's and dot some I's. That's all it really is. How's that Basil Hayden's? I'm gonna sip on mine.
I don't know, haven't had it in a while.
It's so good.
I've been drinking more bourbon lately because I have been. I don't know what it is about like watching like a British star, like when the star of a show is a British guy. Like I just want whiskey. I don't know what it is about it. So I've been watching the new Graham Hancock show on Netflix, Ancient Apocalypse.
Oh my god! So my buddy at work has been just fucking like cornering me out and just saying you need to fucking watch this.
It is very it is extremely.
Yeah, maybe I'll flick it on when I'm done here.
I've been familiar with Graham's work for a while. He's kind of like seen as like a pariah in the science fields and the archaeological fields, but he doesn't claim to be a scientist because he's not. He's a reporter.
Yeah, it's what he says. I'm a journalist.
Yeah, and so he's the things he's digging into are to me are quite interesting. Like an apocalyptic event that happened like 12,500 years ago.
Yeah, so the premise is basically they found a civilization that's thousands of years older than what we originally thought or whatever. Well, that would be considered advanced, where they just had actual commerce.
You're talking about the discovery of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is like the biggest monolith ever made, and they figured out that it was like 5,000 years older than the previous oldest monolith that they thought they had found. So it just proves that
and then it points at Sirius or whatever
earlier on. But the whole premise of the show is that there was an apocalypse that basically took out an advanced civilization, and he thinks that some of the issues that we see with archaeology and basically calling Graham Hancock a kook is that he says that when we talk about advanced technology, archaeology is looking for remnants of us, but who's to say that this technology wasn't far different and then like it was always the argument against it is always like, well, where are the artifacts? Or where's this? Where's that? But then that brings up the idea of myths, right? Why is it that every single ancient civilization has a myth from right around the same time
of a great flood? And
they never knew each other, and all the land that was taken down, 400 feet of sea level at the end of the last ice age disappeared like almost overnight. And so it's interesting. I'm not saying that any of this is real, but it's very interesting to dig into, discuss the possibility.
You piqued my interest, Dan. I'm not going to give you the credit though. I'm going to give it to Sean at work because he
got into it first, or he said it to
you.
Yeah,
he'd be someone actually fun to have on the show if we wanted to talk about mythos and legends and all that kind of stuff. If this is something that we could do an offshoot episode on, he'd probably be all about getting on here.
Yeah, we could. I would like that. I would very much like that.
You would very much. It's immediately clear to me that you would like to learn about the ancient civilizations.
Easy, Jordan Peterson. Or no, Tim Dillon doing Jordan Peterson is what I should say.
Right. It's not immediately clear to me.
Oh man, but we have worse news. Trump is back, and CNN loves it.
They're ecstatic. That was probably one of the best nights of viewership that they've had in a long, long time.
So this kind of speaks to what I mentioned here to kick off the show, which is that I don't really give a shit about Trump announcing that he's running in 2024. Everybody kind of expected it. They even expected it right around this timeline. So what does it really matter? What I think the important thing is how this is covered. If you noticed, the title of tonight's episode is American Politics, Wash, Rinse, Repeat. And that is exactly what we're dealing with right now with regards to Donald Trump running for the 2024 Republican nomination. How do I know this? Because Corey and I were texting back and forth the night of Trump's speech at Mar-a-Lago. I happen to be watching it on CNN. I don't know if you were too. Were you?
I was on CNN.
Were
I
you?
was going back. Yeah, if it's just a speech, it does. I don't think it really matters which outlet I watch.
It doesn't really matter. But immediately from when cutting away from Donald Trump's announcement speech, not a minute and a half later, did one of those talking head morons, I don't remember which one it was. I think it was the brunette lady, the one that was sitting next to Dana Bash. She's like the only one I can seem to remember her name at this point. She goes, in like a disgusted way, she goes, "We're going to be covering him for the next 2 years." And like,
why?
In cheek way, like that's your network's choice. Like, you don't
wink,
have
wink,
to do
nod,
that.
nod. Know what I mean? Know what I mean?
And that was part of the problem, right? With everything that happened in 2016 was the fact that he got all this free media coverage. And now it might even be worse because nobody trusts CNN for good reason. So any negative reports about Donald Trump are just going to reinforce his sycophants and maybe drive some of the people that had moved a little bit away from Trump right back into his arms because they're sick of seeing this nonsense. Now, luckily, we don't have to listen to Don Lemon's sanctimonious dumbass anymore at night. Instead, we have to listen to the nasally Jake Tapper, who doesn't have an opinion of his own regardless. So he's just going to regurgitate whatever the hell comes through the wire. And, and it's not just CNN, right? It's going to be, quote unquote, independent outlets like the Young Turks. It's going to be Occupy Democrats. We're seeing it already.
Dude, all he did, he lives so rent free in so many people's heads that like all he did was announce his presidency, where the fucking actual election is 2 years from now. And I was scrolling down Occupy Democrats like Facebook page, and it's just like Trump, 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 Trump. It's just
all
insane of how much he lives
in prison for drugs, but Trump gets to walk free. Like,
yeah, I shared that one with you. I was like, what does
What are you
one have
talking
to
about?
do with the other? I don't get it. Like, I get he's kind of like I don't know, fucking reach. It's interesting to me, of like, even though we know his game, we know his mantra, like we know how he operates and all of that stuff. Seeing him try to run again for 2024, now granted it is 2 years ago, there isn't the same knee-jerk reaction, just distaste and distrust, like disdain, I guess is the word I'm looking for, and distaste. Yeah, that's another good one that I had. I'm trying to use all these words because like I remember watching this jackass talk 4 years ago at this point and just yelling, "You fucking liar!" Oh my, and just getting all bent out of shape about this guy. And it's like, now it's just like, meh. I mean, you can call it nihilism. You can call it experience now and following politics for almost 10 years. I can't believe it's already almost been 10 years. It's been 6. Jesus. Like, as closely as I have. And it's just laughable, I guess, at this point. It's just like, wash, rinse, repeat. Like you cleverly put in the title. It's just like, here we go again. This fucking guy. My thing is, though, it's like, it's not the same political landscape that it was 4 years or 6 years ago. And he's now, like, before he was a political outsider. Now he's a political insider. His campaign is probably going to be run more like 2016 than 2020.
He's got a head start on every other Republican candidate at this point.
Oh yeah, he's already got roughly a 30% base of the country that's going to crawl over broken glass to vote for him.
Well, and I hope what you said is correct. Like, I don't want to move away from all of the things that we said about the midterms last week and all of the reasons why voters, not the candidates that ran and won, but voters gave us a little bit of hope in the way that they voted. I'm hoping that can carry over for the next 2 years, but we know that a lot can change, and I don't know how many of these fringes are going to be able to, get some of these culture war, culture war centrists, I guess, if you would say, back onto their side, because we still saw so much fear mongering, even from our friends and family, with regards to this election. We're still looking at it, right? A lot of it, at least in our area here, because we had the abortion thing on the ballot. It was, this fear mongering about how the wording was too extreme, and your kids were going to be able to leave your house when they're 5 years old, walk into a psychologist and get a sex change, which is not at all what that initiative was saying. And then on the other side, I had one personally where a lesbian couple that I've known for a long time, not going to name any names, but she posted something on social media that, I won't say it offended me, but it certainly annoyed me. She said something the night before the election of, if you don't understand why gay people are afraid of tomorrow's election, then you don't have any gay friends. You just know gay people. And I looked at that and went, I can't believe we're still on this. Now, I gave her a little bit of extra credit because she is an older woman. Okay. I believe she's in her 50s, that I'm sure as a lesbian woman had to go through a hell of a lot more than a lesbian woman might that's in their 20s or their 30s now. So like, I gave her a little bit of leeway on that, but I'm like, just look at how people feel about homosexuality right now, even conservatives.
It's a non-issue.
It's almost a non-issue. And the people that are against gay marriage, it's really like a morality thing. Nobody, even conservatives, are really pushing for laws against it at this point. You even had Matt Walsh on Joe Rogan a couple of weeks ago, who's, as conservative as they get, right? And he said he's certainly against gay marriage. And I believe Joe asked him, if you had to support legislation against gay marriage, or I think he said gay sex. Matt Walsh was like, I would never support legislation that criminalizes gay sex. And that is like from the king of the fucking religious conservatives that we're talking about right there. So
it is. It's a non-issue. There was just, of course, I get the paywall from New York Times, but I was able to see the number. So fuck off, New York Times. It was the same-sex marriage bill just passed in the Senate today, and it voted 62 to 37, I think it was, and that's 12 Republicans coming over to vote for the bill. Yeah, 62 to 37 vote, which came only days after the midterm. And right there, like the fact that you can, like, when there's a break from the Republican Party like that, it just shows you that to them it's ultimately a milquetoast.
Well, because in my view, like conservatives that
milquetoast policy, like in their view, they're just like, the leadership is just like, yeah, vote whatever.
They ultimately realize like it doesn't have anything to do with me. And like, to me, like that's progress, right? That is progress for the gay community and gay marriage right there. You go back to 2007, Corey. Both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton said they did not support gay marriage.
Yeah.
2007 in their campaigns.
Yep.
And now we have conservatives that basically like they don't love it basically, but they don't really give a shit at the same time.
Yeah, we went from like, yeah, so like the idea that like adults consenting in their own personal bedrooms seems to have become the like the norm, I guess. In the Republican Party is what I'm getting at, to the point, like, or just in general, actually, because like we just said, Obama and Hillary in 2007 said no, they're against it. And we have come with what was that, 15 years. We went from 15 years ago to now we have 12 Republicans voting to support it. Obviously, that means it's all trending in the right direction. And this is after Trump. This is after the abortion bill. This is after the huge social culture wars of drag queens in schools and children getting hormone therapy. like all of that stuff is absolutely attached to the LGBTQ community. But when it came down to the nitty gritty, they were able to still separate that stuff and vote for just adults consenting and personal liberties.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, because you remember when Roe was overturned, like
Yeah.
the big thing was like, women are going to start getting thrown in prison. And I was, to be honest with you, and I still kind of am a little, because we don't know what's going to happen with some of these state laws, even still. But the other one that kind of made me go, really, was next they're going to come after gay marriage.
Yeah.
And the huge difference between Roe and gay marriage is that conservatives have been fighting to overturn Roe for 50 years nonstop. They have never quit on this. That is why the Supreme Court is always so important to them in all of their elections, as to where with liberals or Democrats, it wasn't, because they had the majority for so long and they kind of just fell by the wayside, and we saw how that worked out. But like, I just don't see that kind of fervor for overturning gay marriage at all. I mean,
no, you're right. As evidence
out there, but other than that, it's just not. It's not a big thing.
Like you see the Republicans. Yeah, you see Republicans right now scrambling. Trying to recalibrate their whole stance on abortion and stuff like that after all these midterms and stuff. But yet we also talk about gay marriage as like its own separate thing. And my question to you is, when we want to talk about progress in the country, do you think 12, not one, not two, do you think 12 senators would have voted for a pro-abortion bill?
Was this set? Oh, in the Senate?
Yeah.
12 Republican senators for a pro-choice
pro-abortion, bill? Yeah, pro-choice bill.
No.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to say in comparison when we talk about Roe v. Wade and how it took them 50 years.
I think you'd be lucky to get one or two.
Right. And so I guess that's what I'm getting at. We went from 15 years ago, where the Democratic platform was against gay marriage, to now, I know we've said this like 3 times now, to where 12 Republicans are voting for this. Then it just goes to show that the progress is happening, and that I don't see gay marriage being this type of issue that is worth spending all this exerted effort to fearmonger about, when we have other issues to talk about.
To bring it back around to Trump and the way the media is going to cover this, like, that is going to be just one of at least a handful of examples that are going to be fearmongered at you over the next 2 years. It's going to be, I honestly, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I just don't remember it. And I'm happy to admit when I'm wrong here, but I don't ever remember, even when Trump was president, ever saying anything about homosexuals. Like, I don't remember him ever saying anything about overturning gay marriage or any of that shit. He might have
said, I think he probably said something off the cuff, like, I have gay friends.
Well, he might have said something on the campaign trail, but, to kind of get that evangelical base, like, that might be an example of when he did that. But I just, like, even like, if I have fears about what's going to happen if Donald Trump is president again, and believe me, I don't have that many, because I've seen it once already and I know how this works, even though I don't want to see it. Him coming after homosexuals is just not anywhere near the top of the list of concerns that I have. And I think most of the nation realizes that. I hope that's the case. And I really hope that, places like CNN and MSNBC and the Young Turks and David Pakman and all of these other fucking, fear-mongering Trump grifters don't turn that around to the way that it was in 2015, 2016. I'm going to look at it differently this time around. I think you will too. And I think I'm hoping.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I'm going to have a much clearer eye on all of this. I don't think it's the only way he actually, so let's, I know we got off on a real tangent there about gay marriage, but let's think about how this pathway to success happens for him, right? So if he runs, he would need to win the primary first, which he has a super huge head start on. He's created a fantastic email pool or whatever he's got for all of his Stop the Steal votes. He's got a huge war chest of all the money that's been donated to him by his sycophants for years now, for the whole Stop the Steal thing that he did not spend on any of the people that he that he endorsed, which why, like, you know, like on paper, yeah, he had 200 or so win versus 11 lose, but the ones that counted lost. You know, those 11 that lost are the ones that they hurt him
Yeah,
a
he
lot
mentioned in
more.
his speech that raw number of all the people that won, but
Yeah.
any of the ones that he actually had a chance to lose, or his candidates had a chance to lose, almost all of them lost.
Yeah, the ones that counted lost.
Yeah.
Okay. So now there's that with this midterm, the what, like his endorsements, the senator or the House representatives that won that he endorsed were probably gonna win anyways. The ones that counted that he propped up with the help of the Democrats, of course, because they spent millions of dollars in their campaigns, lost. And so now it's a presidency, a House, and a Senate twice that he lost. Or a presidency once, a House and a Senate twice. Well, I guess 3 times if you want to count this midterms.
Mhm.
And you know, like I'm looking at 538 right now. Donald Trump's favorability as of November 17th, 2022 is still 54% unfavorable. The only way he gets into the primary and into the actual general is chicanery in the fucking Republican Party, because you know, like, was it Pompeo was talking about running? Not Newsom. Who's the guy? I know it starts with an N. I always forget his name. The guy from North Carolina.
Oh, I'm blanking.
You're blanking. You know who I'm talking about, though,
Not
right?
Anthony Blinken. I'm blanking.
Yeah. Who else is it? Pence is running an exploratory thing to run. DeSantis.
Yeah.
Nikki Haley. Yeah, there's a bunch of people that are throwing their hats into the ring, and if that happens, then Trump's already coming in with a 30% guaranteed vote. He might get the general. But if he gets the general, I don't see him winning the I mean, if he gets the general like selection, I don't see him winning against
If he wins the primary, you don't think
if he wins the primary, I don't see him winning the general. Yes, those are the words that I was trying to get to come out of my mouth. Thanks, Dan.
I mean, that's what we said last time. And here's the only difference that I would say is that I think Trump himself is just a little bit different than the candidates which he endorses, right? So what we often see from the candidates that he's most fervently endorsed, because he's endorsed a ton of people, but like you think about
2 out of 1, Dan.
you think about the JD Vances, and you think about the Herschel Walkers and the Lauren Boeberts and the Marjorie Taylor Greens, particularly Boebert and Green. These were 2 candidates that just decided to just be like baby little Trumps, especially Boebert. Honestly, Boebert from that perspective is worse than Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene is crazy in her own right, but she is a little bit different than Boebert in that way. And Lauren Boebert, an incumbent in a +9 district, goddamn near lost.
Yeah.
So it's this interesting thing where Trump nationally himself, I think, performs better than the candidates in which he endorses. And I think there's a lot to that. So, you know, what can happen over the next 2 years? Who the hell knows? And, you know, I'm just, like I said last week, Corey, I'm not ready to bury Donald Trump. I'm not, because we all know that if we see, you know, if the Republican Party farts around forever and, you know, Ron DeSantis gets a little scared, or, you know, Mitch McConnell turtles up again, as he always does to Donald Trump every single fucking time. Every time he's had a chance to denounce him, he hasn't done it. Could have done it after January 6th. Didn't do it. There are many, many moving parts over the next 2 years that could give Trump an advantage. And if we're looking at a Trump-Biden rematch, again, don't know what's going to happen over the next 2 years. There is absolutely no way I'm counting Donald Trump out in that race.
If Biden gets inflation and gas prices under control in the next 2 years,
that will change everything. I agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And hopefully listens to his goddamn general and gets us the fuck out of Ukraine, which is I say that like we have troops on the ground, but we have proxy troops on the ground, which is actually our next topic.
Yeah, that's a good segue. But I was just gonna say real quick that Trump doesn't stand a chance if Biden gets inflation and gas prices under control and the Ukraine crisis is settled. If all of those things are still issues in 2024, then Trump beats Biden.
I would completely agree with that.
That's if Biden is still alive then. But if those things happen, because Trump is such a toxic figure, if inflation is okay, gas prices are down, unemployment stays about where it is right now, even if it goes up to like 5%, and we see Ukraine crisis ending, they could literally roll Biden out on a gurney and the mass populace would vote for him because of the fact the other option is Donald Trump. If it's DeSantis, I don't think it matters. I think DeSantis beats Biden no matter what.
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me about DeSantis, if I'm, speaking as a Republican strategist here, is we've seen a lot of governors try to go national, and just for some reason it doesn't resonate the same way. So I think you would have to show some pretty strong polling. I mean, George W. Bush was the last one that's really had a strong showing, right? Barely beat Gore. It's generally senators that are stepping up and going national and taking a lot of these Republican primaries and Democratic primaries too. So can he be the exception to that rule? I think he could. I definitely could see how he could. Because we already see a lot of out of state people that aren't Floridians really liking this guy. Now, but we the midterms just happened. That could easily cool off. I guess in short order. So that would probably be the only concern I would have with DeSantis right now, even with all of the fervor around him following the midterms. So that was it. You want to move on to Ukraine?
Yeah, we can move on to Ukraine. So what did I have? We went to sleep with puckered butts, only to give a shaky sigh of relief the next morning.
So obviously we're speaking about the missile that landed in, I can't remember the name of the village, that small 8-person village in eastern Poland.
Oh, I should know that one.
Which I just didn't bother to read the actual name.
It starts with a P. It's like Well,
I'm not going to count on you to be able to pronounce it.
Oh, why not, Dan? You don't think I can pronounce words?
You guys pronounce words? You can't
Przewoowo. Presvidov? Presvidov?
I'm not even gonna try. Not even gonna try.
I'm gonna say Presvidov. That's what I'm gonna say, Dan.
Okay. I'll go with it. So 2 people killed in Presvidov.
No, Presvidov. Damn it! I thought I was the one, Dan. That said bad words.
I'm just listening to you. I'm not actually reading it in front of me.
I don't fucking know.
So instant reaction was what?
Oh yeah, it was all the Latvian countries. Zelensky, the same one. It's World War III. Russia intentionally attacked Poland. We need to go in there and fuck them up.
And I saw it because you texted it to me. I hadn't seen it yet. I probably would have seen it in minutes because I was just logging onto my computer when you texted it to me. And I went, it's so interesting that we do this now, because when you send me something, and I think you do the same thing when I send you something that you hadn't seen yet, I always take just a brief pause. I always take a brief pause and go, okay, what are we looking at here?
Yeah.
In terms of how we're going to talk about this on the show. And my immediate first thoughts were accident. That was number one, but also false flag. That was my second thought. And you had said, well, the Russians were, they had been sending missiles into Kiev and other areas of Ukraine all day long. And so the false flag narrative probably falls into second place for me for that. But my thought was like, okay, a missile that went off course. But what it ended up turning out being, right, Corey, was a Ukrainian defense missile that broke up a Russian missile that happened to fly into Poland. Now, before you give your opinion on this, when I first heard that, I went, okay, I can see so many people looking at that and going, boy, that sounds awfully convenient that it would land in this tiny village after.
Right. Like all of NATO's cucking to Russia.
Yeah. I don't know, just an interesting thought.
Yeah, no, that is like, I had a guy at work say that to me, and he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "That really," he goes, "really, a missile going thousands of miles an hour can get hit by another missile at thousands of miles an hour, and it can just go ding and
I mean,
knock it off course."
the missile getting hit by the other missile is not the surprise. I mean, our technology is pretty goddamn good. We can
Right, but
intercept
but
missiles.
keeping that missile intact and just knocking the trajectory off a few miles. It does sound a little far-fetched, but
Has it
I
been
think
shown that it was a full missile that hit? Was it the
something
entire?
hit and left a big ass crater.
But it could have been a fragment, right?
Yeah, but how big was that fucking missile then?
That's a good point.
But I think about, like, I always try to think of historical context, no matter how minuscule it may seem. But stranger things have happened. Do you remember? Like, there's always, you see that meme every once in a while from World War One. Some guy with a metal detector found 2 bullets that collided midair during the trench warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're talking about tiny little things, and we're not talking about technology and stuff to do with it. It's just like, no one died from it. It just 2 bullets hit, and then it fell to the ground, and it sat there for 50 years until someone dug it up. But that right there just shows you that physics and things like that are fucking wild. People have been shot from wild angles, from weird fucking deflections. I mean, if you want to believe the John F. Kennedy story,
Mm-hmm.
the magic bullet, like, stranger things have happened. So I can see that missile happening. And, like, what I was really holding my breath for was Russia's response to this happening. And I remember saying to people when I first heard about the news, I was like, it all depends on what Russia says. If Russia goes, "Oh, fuck, no, that wasn't supposed to happen," then it was unintentional. Then that, like, you know what I mean? Unintentional accidents and intentional bolstering are 2 very different things. And if a country, like, if Russia would have came out and goes, "Yeah, and we're gonna do it fucking again," then
Well,
it's game on. That's NATO Article 5.
the reason that I was so skeptical at first that this was an intentional missile from the Russians was, why in the fuck would Putin attack a NATO territory in such a small village just 50 miles away from the
Was
Ukraine?
it 50 or 15? I've heard
Something
5. I heard 50. Trump
That's
said 50. I don't think it was that far.
Either way, it was not far. But I mean, like, it's semantics, right? This tiny village. The only reason that Putin would ever do that is if he had legitimate intelligence that somehow NATO was moving a shitload of military equipment through that particular village. But then again, where the hell are you going to hide it in a village that's that small? You know what I'm saying? It just didn't add up that this was an intentional bombing. Like, if Putin was going to go after NATO, I mean, don't you think he would launch a missile at Warsaw or something? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, this doesn't even destroy a logistical, like, line. It doesn't destroy any sort of, like, highway system. It doesn't do anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no strategy to getting a country who really wants to come in and try to fuck you up, who's already like a dog in a cage that's being shook, you know, and coupled with 5 or 6 other Baltic countries that are like, we need to go now.
Yep, they're ready. And which
And
I understand. I mean, think about if this was going on in Mexico right now, or you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I get it.
And you're
It's right in
sitting
your
there,
back door, right in your backyard.
and that's one good thing with NATO, because we intentionally, like, NATO's the only thing that is holding these countries back. Poland would be involved. You know they would. The way that rhetoric is coming from them, from the Baltic states, we would have troops, and it's based on how Russia's been doing. There would probably be war happening in Russia right now if these countries could actually get involved, but they can't because of a treaty. And I think Putin knows that. He does a lot of rattling about, like, nuclear war and this and that, but that's the only card he has. But what was it,
Douglas McGregor?
Douglas McGregor, which now I have a little caveat for that. I do have pause on what he does say on his show, or what he said on Pushback, because the fact I took his word for a lot of credit when it came to the actual Russian invasion. If you remember, he was on that show saying it wasn't going to happen, and it did.
Mhm.
So for him just to say they're not going to use nuclear weapons It's like, well, I can't just take you at your word now because you were wrong once. And but he makes a good point. He goes, nuclear fallout, they're not going to drop a nuclear bomb on Ukraine 50 miles from their border because of the fact that it could just blow right back into their country.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to do that.
So yeah, so Douglas McGregor, who was a former Pentagon advisor, was on Aaron Monte's Pushback show over the weekend, I believe. And what I got from him just made so much sense, because you've actually been able to see it in this timeline. Now, you are correct; he was on shortly before Putin.
Yeah, I still take it. I still take his word for a lot of merit, but it's just like, well everyone can be wrong. Hey, brightness.
What he says makes so much sense in that because we've seen Putin doing this. He rattles the cage, right? He intimidates a little bit. He escalates to de-escalate. That's his strategy.
Yeah.
And that's I didn't really think about it that way in that kind of context until I heard McGregor actually say that. I'm like, that's
what I thought he was doing. You remember me saying that on the show? I'm like, that's what he's doing before he goes to Ukraine.
And that's probably what he was doing before he went into Ukraine. And then he escalated by moving into Ukraine. That was the next step of escalation. Like, I don't think McGregor's saying that it's not dangerous that he's doing this, because what happens when he gets to the point of escalation that, we actually do have nuclear war.
Yeah, if he escalates too much, he's gonna back himself into a corner. And that's not just rhetoric from mainstream media, that if he's escalating to de-escalate, there is a point where he might escalate too much to where it isn't going to de-escalate, and it's going to be like a snowball going down a hill. And that almost happened with Ukraine, or with Poland, and that missile that hit.
Mm-hmm.
And my God, I give NATO and America a lot of credit, because could you imagine how much noise was coming into that what's the situation room? What do they call that room when they're all in there, when they're all together, when they're talking about issues like this?
That's the situation room.
Yeah. Oh no, he wasn't even there. He was. Well, no, they also have a show on Fox called The Situation Room.
Yeah. No,
but
CNN with Wolf Blitzer.
CNN. That shows you how much I actually watch the mainstream media. Trump wasn't even there. He was in was it not Brussels, but he was somewhere for the G20 summit when this happened.
Yeah.
And Putin is a dumb boy.
Well, we know
that's what you win TV just said. Putin is a dumb boy. Well, I agree.
Well, War Room.
War Room.
Got it.
Thanks for the fact check.
The War Room. Hell, we had that at one of my old companies I used to work at. We had a room called the War Room where we'd go in there and discuss business. So I mean, business. On the other side of Douglas McGregor, we also had a 3-star general and former defense advisor for the Trump administration, H.R. McMaster, on Bari Weiss's podcast. Now, this is the very neocon take on the entire situation, to where he basically feels that we have to remain actively at war until Putin feels he's defeated. Here's the problem with this. You're not going to do that until you actually get NATO troops involved. Putin is never going to feel defeated until you get actual NATO troops involved. Now, if you're a neocon, you might say, well, then I guess that's what we need to do and risk nuclear war. But if you're Biden's own top general right now, Mark Milley, going, no, we got to do something different. We're wasting too much money. We're never going to be able to win this the way that we want to win this. And so you have to consider conceding a little bit to Vladimir Putin. And here's why I say that. It's not that it's something I want to do, right? I wish we didn't have to. I wish he would go away. I wish the supposed cancer that he has would take him out and we can move on. But
we have to think about what's next.
As it stands, you are not going to win this. You are setting yourself up for another proxy war situation where all you do, what was it? I can't remember who said this. Is it Jimmy Dore who says this? Somebody says this. The United States and NATO are going to be willing to fight this war down to the last Ukrainian. Then what?
Yeah. And because of things like NATO and who Russia is, that's what makes it so frustrating. It's like you saw how like it just looking at it, it just from like a million-mile view, like bird's eye view, it just seems so fucking trivial. Like there's still like the Odessa port is still open. We're still moving a bunch of grain out of Ukraine while they're all fighting and Russia's for it. Russia owns the Black Sea and they're still letting Ukraine do trade. Like
Not
if it was
formally,
really
but
all
yes,
out
they do.
war.
They militarily own the Black Sea right now. They don't formally own it.
Right. Well, I mean that. Like, yeah, like you go over in the Black Sea in a rowboat with an American flag, and you'll see who owns that Black Sea real quick. Just like in the China Sea. You know what I mean?
It'd be weird if a fisherman, like an American fisherman who for some reason just decided he wanted to fish in the Middle East, took off into the Black Sea, and that's what started World War III.
Stranger things have happened. It was the Britannica that got bombed, even though they were actually sneaking weapons over.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
Yep. But what I'm getting at is I forget what made me want to say this, but I was saying how Russia still feels untouched on their land because they have nuclear weapons, and we basically feel untouched in all of NATO land until this recent Poland incident. But how quick Russia was like, whoa, no, that wasn't us. It just shows how much of a dumb proxy war this is. And it just goes to solidify what you're saying about how America will fight Ukrainians or America will fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Because if this was all out war and we were in war in a neighboring country if we were in war somewhere and borders be damned, if there was missiles attacking our troops, we would snuff out the root cause. Ukraine isn't even doing that.
Yeah, and you have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, calling for this being the quote-unquote best opportunity for Ukraine to negotiate a Russian withdrawal. And here's the problem. Here's the issue that I keep having. Is like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take General Milley at his word. Let's say, because Biden owns Zelensky. Okay, we know this. We own Zelensky at this point. If Biden goes, okay, go ahead and negotiate a withdrawal, do whatever you're comfortable with. As far as like, if you want to give territory up to Putin, go ahead. We'll leave it up to you. It's your country, which we would never do. But go ahead and have that negotiation. And if Putin buries his boots in the sand and says, fuck you, we're not negotiating. Well, doesn't that make NATO look a little bit better? Because now NATO and the Ukrainians have at least tried to negotiate a peace here.
On the world stage, absolutely.
I mean, I just don't see how you can lose doing that, other than we know lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money involved.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, that's true. And like, I think Putin knows that like he is quickly, like at an accelerated rate, just disconnecting himself from the whole entire world. China and Biden were together, and like that's a whole nother can of worms to open in regards to our relationship with China. But in the very least, China and America both said that unequivocally that nuclear war is bad.
You don't say. Even though
and that's kind of a swipe at Russia because we're not talking about nuclear bombs. The only ones that are is Russia.
Oh no, I mean the corporate media is talking about it. Oh, it's just tactical nuclear weapons. Who gives a shit about it? I'll wipe out a few city blocks for 12 years because it'll be radioactive. No big deal. It's tactical nuclear weapons. Better not use those. We're coming for you. It's terrifying. Yeah. It's one thing I can't. Just gives me the chills.
Oh, how just nonchalantly just the end of the world is just talked about.
Yeah, no big deal. We were gonna get there eventually anyway, right? Might as well be our generation.
I wonder if it's this weird disconnect that media has. Like when you become an observer of like social unrest and culture and all the different ebbs and flows of like what a society does. You create a sort of filter between you and that to where it's like you don't feel like you're going to be affected. Just kind of like how you and I are sometimes when we talk about this stuff, because we're so just emotionally just not attached to it.
Mm.
That it's like, I wonder if like something has to do with that. But then I also wonder of how that, and then you see them say that stuff, and then you see a commercial for Raytheon, and then it's like, oh, okay, never mind.
It's again, I mean, it's the fact that like North America and Central America, I guess you could even include, so isolated from the rest of the goings on of the world. Like it's got its advantage. It's a blessing and a curse. You know, it's nice that we're like everything's kind of way over there and we don't really have to worry about it, at least in the short term, right? But then
I was thinking about that today of how
it just makes us so fucking disconnected from what's actually happening anywhere else in the world.
well, you know,
To where it's easy to go. We just need to assassinate Putin. We just need to
just check them out and come back home.
hold on.
It goes back to what Madison said. Well, not Madison. I think it was Was it Washington? One of the founding fathers said that we
One of them old dead guys.
One of those old dead guys said that we should not meddle in European affairs,
and that's all we do.
And that's all we do. But you know, like geopolitically, European affairs aren't even necessarily as important as they were in the 20th century. You know what I mean? Like now, it's a lot of it has to do with Asia, like you know, the China Sea and all that area over there with Taiwan and North Korea and South Korea. North Korea feels like they're not being talked to right now, so they're launching a bunch of random nukes to get attention. They're like, hey, don't forget about us. And
that's a culture that nobody in Congress actually understands, like what's going on.
Nope. And anyone that does is vilified by Trump, calling him Coco Chow. Fucking idiot. That's about to be our next president, Dan.
Little rocket man. You know what's so great? Like Donald Trump, when he is not in office, is fucking hilarious. Like I will never ever say that. I would never say he's not a funny man. But when he's holding the nuclear codes, the funny
when he's not holding the nuclear codes and just has the old codes on file in Mar-a-Lago, he's funny.
I mean, we see how offended Americans get by comedy. I can't even imagine what people around the world get offended by when it comes to comedy. So, yeah, a comedian.
We're like, yeah, it takes. I feel like it takes a lot for an American because we are so based on free speech that everyone just off the cuff just says so much random shit here without repercussion. That like anywhere that has any sort of censure on free speech,
I don't know. You can't be black in America and make a Jew joke right now. That's kind of
that's not true. Chappelle kind of did.
Off color. You know
what?
They
gave him some shit for it, but
he didn't really say anything though.
No, he's an artful orator. That's why they call him the GOAT.
We're speaking of his appearance on Saturday Night
Live, yeah.
I'm gonna give Lorne Michaels. I'm gonna give Saturday Night Live some credit for that because my God, they could have easily just not done that. They could have easily just not had him on.
That's true. Good for them.
And cucked out to the woke mob. Oh, anyway.
All right.
Speaking of woke mob, COVID amnesty over my dead body.
Over my dead body.
That ain't gonna happen. So obviously, we're talking about the article that came out Christmas Halloween. In the Atlantic by what the hell was her name? Emily Oster of Brown University. Lots of folks, if you're a podcast listener, have talked about this. We decided to wait because a lot of the reaction that I heard about this article, including from myself, I caught myself doing this, there was a lot of anger, and understandably so. Corey was a little bit more level-headed when we first talked about this. I was pissed because what I saw here was an elitist Brown professor saying
from Brown University.
Yeah, I'm so glad you corrected me. Oh, that was good.
Words matter, Dan.
Totally do. An elitist white professor from Brown University. Oh man. Decided to basically say that, you know, everybody got some things wrong and we need to forgive each other. And my instant reaction was basically, fuck you. Like a lot of us knew what was going on. A lot of us listen to actual experts in the field. These are the people. I'm going to give my little rant and then we can actually talk about it. People like Emily Oster are the people that were trying to get Joe Rogan canceled for disinformation about COVID. Her and her class were the people that were keeping doctors like Peter McCullough off of mainstream media for their I don't know, truth-telling techniques. And so, yeah, my instant reaction was, fuck you. You silenced actual truth, or at least discussion of what might be true, in the name of phony science and totalitarianism. That's what you fucking did. I will never forgive the elites for doing that. I'll forgive my next door neighbor for falling for it. I'll forgive myself because right at the beginning, I fell for it a little bit too.
Yeah, I did too. Absolutely.
I think most of us, it didn't take long. It didn't take more than a couple of months to be like, it seems weird that I should have to be wearing a mask outside when nobody's within 200 feet of me. You know, things like that kind of started to trickle in. And it took these elitist assholes forever to admit they were wrong. So, yeah, I'll forgive my neighbor who's like me, who I have way more in common with than I do the likes of your fucking ass. Yeah, I'll forgive them. I ain't going to forgive you. Sorry.
And that's almost pretty much exactly where I'm at. You know, it's like we're only as informed as the information that is being given to us. And in the very beginning of COVID, like, dude, like I remember I had my birthday. It was May 2nd. COVID happened in March. It was like 2 months later. Everything was locked down. It was my 30th birthday. And I still, like, what I did was I just had like do like a drive-by thing. People would just drive by. They would sit at the end of my driveway. I had this night. I made the best of it. I had this big ass like lawn chair set up underneath this like tent, like a pop-up canopy. And I just sat there just getting wasted. And I had all of my friends come by and they'd sit at the end of the driveway and we'd bullshit and talk. And they would put beers, like literally take their beers that they got for me and put it up by the driveway. And they'd walk back and I'd go and grab them. It's absolutely silly bullshit to think about 3 years later. And doing the whole house party thing and Zoom calls with friends and not talking to each other.
Dropping food off to your parents.
And just getting so angry with people who are just straight up denying it. And I remember my mom wanting to give me a hug and I said, I can't. And her being offended and being like, Mom, it's weird. Like, I get it. Like, not that you're dirty or not that I'm dirty, but one of us could have could have COVID on us that we don't know. And I don't want to be the one that kills you, you know, and all of that kind of stuff, to where the masking and people getting too close to each other and saying, hey, get away from me 6 feet. I'm 100% okay with all of that. Just being fucking forget it. Get over it. Like, we were all, it was a wild time. I went and spent $1,500 on groceries and then bought an ozonator, you know, to purify things.
Like, we can't just forget about it. We have to learn from it. And that's one of the things about this article that really pisses me off.
So there's one part of the article that I liked, and she says, it's a she, right?
Yeah. You want me to just read it? It's not long. I got the whole thing in front of me.
Well, let me just find it real quick. She goes, the people who got it right for whatever reason may want to gloat. Those who got it wrong for whatever reason may feel defensive and retrench into a position that doesn't accord with the facts. All of this gloating and defensiveness continue to gobble up a lot of social energy and drive the culture wars, especially on the internet. These discussions are heated, unpleasant, and ultimately unproductive. In the face of so much uncertainty, getting somewhat right had a hefty element of luck, and similarly, getting something wrong wasn't a moral failing. Treating pandemic choices as a scoreboard on which some people racked up more points than others is preventing us from moving forward. In the collective, yes. In the conversations I had with people about vaccines, and in the conversations I had with people about masks and social distancing and schools closing and businesses closing, yes. We weren't privy to information that other people had. But this is why this article is not good. for lack of a better term, because we need to hold the people that were in charge accountable for the sake of lives being saved for the next time this happens, because it's only a matter of time, whether it's a year from now or whether it's 100 years from now. The people need to be held accountable, so when the people that are in charge next time see this happening, they know that they can't just follow some narrative, and they need to take pause and really look at what's going on, because of the fact that there is no trust in any of the bureaucracies that are there, that are in intent, that were initially designed in good faith for the protection of American or citizens of the world.
See, here's what I don't like about the paragraph you just read. I agree with most of what you just said, but she speaks out of both sides of her mouth. When she says things like getting it right involved a hefty amount of luck.
When I read it, I was like,
about?
yeah, there was no luck. There was other data that was getting sprinkled in there that people had that at this point was proven true. But that were called literal conspiracy theories.
The very next sentence is, and similarly, getting something wrong wasn't a moral failing. Right, not from my next door neighbor.
Yeah,
getting this fucking information from
my friends that I was talking to on Facebook, and we were both like just trying to decipher through the information and have conversations about it, and we were both like, "You're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you are. No, you are." That's fine.
Treating pandemic choices as a scorecard on which some people racked up more points than others is preventing us from moving forward. Like, no, fuck you. Nobody's looking at this as a scoreboard. There was right and there was wrong, and your team was wrong. And all you can do, I'm getting heated about it again. I guess waiting a month didn't do anything. But your team you want to sit there and act like both sides got shit wrong. Not really. I mean, she brought up the whole bleach thing, right? Health officials had to tell people not to inject bleach. Okay, if there were 3 people in the United States that actually injected bleach because they thought it was going to help with their COVID, how long were they going to live anyway? Okay, don't give me that. Don't give me that bullshit.
It could have been anything that told them to inject bleach.
Oh, these elitists. I thought I was going to be able to go through this without getting mad.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right, man. Like, remember we talked about it a couple months ago, like Fauci being fired, it needed to happen because the people that believe him are going to believe him regardless. And if we want to gain faith in the institution, if this is about saving lives and not about some political scoreboard,
well,
then getting rid of the people who created distrust in these bureaucracies that are supposed to save our lives is the fucking first step. Right?
Talking to people on the ground that matter, talking to actual doctors who are treating COVID.
I have friends who are straight up COVID deniers. Yeah. And I will absolutely forgive them and have to go with my tail tucked between my legs on a couple topics with it. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. The people that are in charge that have the weight on their shoulders of who literally every single decision they make has the balance of millions of lives in their hands. If they get that wrong, they need to be held accountable. There is no brushing this under the rug. It's almost as simple as that, right? I mean,
if and when we see this again, my hope is that, as we'll see it again, maybe not in our lifetimes, but we'll see a pandemic again at some point in human history. And I'm actually really intrigued. I'm glad I'm a relatively young man, and I'm 34 years old. I hope to at least live into my 80s. Like, I honestly can't wait to look back at how, not that I want to get old, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm anxious to look back and see how this entire thing is viewed by history. Like, is this going to be viewed as, well, man, some people got sick, it turned out not to be as bad as we thought, and then we just moved on? Or is this going to be a situation where history holds the elites and the government accountable? I hope it's the latter.
It's probably not.
It's happened before, right? When you look at things like the Great Depression, fucking Herbert Hoover is regarded as one of the worst presidents of all time because of the way he handled that big problem. I don't think you can really look to the Spanish flu so much because, again, science and biology and virology just didn't really exist the way that it does today back then. So yeah, it makes a little bit more sense to lock down in 1917 when you don't know what the hell's going on for years. But now, it's not the same thing. And so I don't know. I'm hopeful, I guess, in that regard. Usually I'm the nihilist, but you're the one who's not hopeful on that one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's heads ultimately at the top. Heads have to roll. I agree with that 100%. Heads got to roll. We're like I said, we're only as good as the information given to us, and there was information that wasn't being shared properly, and whether it was a narrative, whether it was a motivation driven by money or a motivation driven by power, whatever it is, we were let down by our government.
Not only was it not properly shared with us, Corey, it was actively demonized.
Oh, to have any sort of thought on the outside of it. Yeah, I am the science.
Yeah.
And I have a garbage can right there.
You were throwing that at Corey actually has a poster of Anthony Fauci on the wall regularly.
That I just throw stuff at. But yeah, no, it's we really do need, like, when it comes to moving on, like, society needs to move on. Sure. But we can't just give people a pass for the sake of trying to move on and not giving them any sort of accountability, because the next time anything like this happens, it's just going to be the same route if there's no repercussion. I want whoever's in charge next time something like this happens to go, oh, fuck, we can't do that, because the last time we did that and just didn't follow, not necessarily follow, but like, we can't do that because the last time we did that, people went to jail for it.
And it was just proof of government not wanting to give back power when they take it. But it was also, you want to talk about the good side of this, it was also a demonstration of the American people going, no, we hold the power. And although I know it took a lot of the bluest states out there to ultimately lift all these restrictions, but eventually we did get there. And I'm going to take that as a positive, because it could have very easily gone the other way. I don't think we realize how close we might have come to going the other way. I don't even know if I realize it. I don't know if I'm overplaying it or underplaying it, but I just think it's something to think about. How close we might have actually come to some sort, I'm not going to say like totalitarianism, but like some sort of like proxy authoritarianism kind of thing.
It's just mean like a bureaucracy like the NSA?
Yeah, I mean, we're already there. Let's be honest. We live in a corporate oligarchy. It's no secret, but you know what I mean? Like the fact that even though we do live in what I view to be a technical corporate oligarchy, we do still have power. And I think the end of the way we treated COVID was a real demonstration of that. I think it took us too long to get there, but we got there. So
right. And so like it goes
from it.
And the two almost coincide with each other when I talk about when we talk about forgiving our fellow citizens and our fellow neighbors and stuff like that, and all of this stuff, and letting bygones be bygones when it comes to our disagreements on COVID. But if we're going to say that, then we should also be saying that it's even more important that the people who let us down, that were at the top, need to absolutely be held accountable. So when the next time this happens, for the sake of the very neighbors I'm talking about, we can be on the same page with the pandemic and not have to sit here and argue about bullshit while people are dying because of the fact they don't trust the people that I might trust, and vice versa.
Yeah, and the problem too is that like it was along, red blue lines, and I think not just. I think I give credit to two things for what happened. With regards to voters in these midterm elections, proving that they're not fucking morons. And I think Donald Trump forcing people to be more culturally literate, for better or worse, is one of those. And I think COVID was the other one, because that's another thing that was along red blue lines. I'm having more and more discussions, and not with everybody, but I'm having more and more discussions where I'm getting this, I really fucking hate both parties response. I'm getting so much more of that now in like the last year than I would have in 2016, 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
Some people might lean one direction, And then I'll say, well, say they lean Republican. I'll be like, well, Republicans suck for this reason. And they'll go, yeah, you're kind of right. Or if they lean Democrat, well, Democrats did this. Oh, yeah, you're kind of right. It's not like this. There's a lot less of this, at least when you're doing open discourse. I'm not necessarily talking about social media, but when you're out in the world speaking to people, there's a lot more willingness to go, yeah, I see your point. So don't necessarily pay attention to what you see on social media, but like if you actually have these discussions with people, which I think there too many Americans are still afraid to have because of what they see. But those discussions are out there as long as you can keep a level head and the person you're talking to can keep a level head. If somebody gets mad, obviously walk away. But
change the topic. Oh, did you see that sports?
No, you see how sports ball? Yeah, no,
I love the sports ball.
I don't know. I can't believe we can't.
I saw this thing. It says if you're ever in an awkward conversation, just ask someone what their favorite deep sea creature is. Everybody has one, and they're dying to tell you about it. Right? I ask you, what's your favorite deep sea creature, Dan?
What's the one with the big light bulb that comes off the front?
I know it's the lanternfish.
Something like
the lamphir, or not the lamphir. The lamphir is the one that has the sucker mouth
with the big teeth. It's got the.
I know which one you're talking about. It's like some sort of lanternfish.
I don't even know what it's called.
Well, it's a pretty cool fish.
You look at fish. I like looking at it.
I like dolphins.
Is that deep sea?
I don't know. It's just a sea creature. I don't know what's considered deep and what's considered not.
You said deep sea creature, not.
All right, I'm sorry. Are we really about to have an argument about? I'm trying to.
Okay, no, because I would change my answer if it was just overall sea creature. The overall favorite sea creature is the orca, you motherfucker.
The orca, the killer whale.
Well, yeah.
I like the dolphins. Not the team, just dolphins.
I don't know if this is true, but I have read somewhere that there has never been an orca attack on humans anywhere ever in the wild that's been recorded.
Right, but dolphins have.
Yeah, so fuck you. Mine are better.
What the fuck are you talking about? Dolphins are fucking cool. Dolphins get high on each. Dolphins literally do puff puff pass with a puffer fish. They bite on it a little bit to get the neurotoxin and then launch it to the next one, and they're all getting high with each other.
But also, I'm pretty
sure a lot of rape though. A lot of rape going on in the dolphin.
It's very rapey species. But also, I believe an orca is actually a species of dolphins. So I'm not really sure what we're arguing about.
They are, right? It's bottlenose dolphin and orca. They're not necessarily a whale. I don't know what makes them different. I wish we had a Jamie that I could have him look it up because he would.
Somebody here to figure out what the difference is. Porpoises? What's a porpoise? Isn't that like a walrus?
What is porpoise?
Yeah, no porpoises allowed at SeaWorld.
That was just some philosophical question. What is porpoise, Dan?
I don't know. I'm not a marine biologist, Corey. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, George Costanza.
Well, is that a Jew joke?
What? No, now it is.
Police need policing again, Corey.
Oh, God damn it. All right.
Your story. You pointed this out to me. I did look into it a little bit. So there was a man I can't remember where it was. I had it in front of me. Somewhere in Arizona.
Goodyear, Arizona.
Goodyear, Arizona. They make great tires there.
Not great police, though.
No, so there was a man that was apparently, at least allegedly at this point, shot by police because he was in his own backyard. Was he in his own backyard or just a backyard?
A resident's backyard, or the resident's backyard is what it says.
Stabbing himself.
Yeah. At about 5:30 p.m., officers responded to a home in the area to a person who was stabbing himself with a knife. After police made contact with the man in the backyard of the residence, an officer fired at him. As a result of the contact, a Goodyear police statement said. And so this is why I'm talking how, like, we get a lot of noise about defunding the police and refunding the police and reforming the police and all these different conversations about police. But this right here is the perfect example of just police really botching their job. This guy was literally not harming anyone else but himself. He clearly had a mental health crisis. He clearly needed help. And the police gave him the help that I guess he kind of wanted. But it wasn't the help that he probably was.
Cop.
Yeah, yeah, he was obviously like trying to kill himself. And the police show up because someone goes, "Hey, this guy's trying to kill himself." And they're like, "Oh, fuck if he does. We got the fucking monopoly on violence," and then they killed him.
I shouldn't be laughing. That's really dark. I just took that as a really dark joke, and
It kind of was. Police have the monopoly on violence.
here's what I took out of this story. And I'm going to go to a place that maybe you didn't want to go. But I am going to bring race into this a little bit. And that is because this is a situation where I think there is proof that, I guess I shouldn't say proof. That's kind of an absolutist kind of word. But I think this is serious evidence that the relationship between cops and the people in which they serve, I use that word loosely, has everything to do with class and next to nothing to do with race. And the longer we sit here and we pretend like it's race and not class, the longer we're gonna have to deal with this. And here's why I say this, Corey. This is a story that has gone relatively uncovered. This is a story that has gone uncovered to the point where there hasn't even been an update on it that I've been able to find here. Let me go back in about 4 days. This was basically covered locally. This was
looking at the AZ Central story.
I don't remember which one I had up here. It was one of the local local.
I was just curious. Look at the same one.
Arizona ABC 15 is the one I had up. It was on MSN. It was just kind of floated about here a little bit. And the reason I bring that up is because there is no doubt in my mind that if this man was black, it would have been reported nationally, or at least maybe not nationally, but certainly made it to more outlets with more updates, right? And I'm not
He'd
saying
be described as black,
right? And I'm not
just an unidentified man. It'd be an unidentified black man.
That's absolutely right. And I'm not saying this isn't meant to be like some sort of white lives matter diatribe. I hope my listeners know me better than that by now. But it's an issue of the fact that there's no doubt that the media does push the black folks getting killed by cops narrative. And it's awful every single time it happens, right? It's horrible every single time it happens. But I always look at these things and I go, what if this were a situation where it were a well-to-do, right? So let me just bring up my county here, right? I live in Oakland County, Michigan, just north of Detroit, and it is per capita one of the richest counties in the country. Now, I don't live in the rich areas. Don't worry. There's some poor areas here too. But there's particularly two zip codes. There's Birmingham and there's Bloomfield Hills. Very, very, very rich areas. If there were a black man having a mental break in his own backyard, a well-to-do black man who owns his own home in Bloomfield Hills, and the cops were called, do you think that black man would be shot?
No.
He wouldn't be shot. He wouldn't be shot. And that just speaks to class.
Unless
right?
they thought he was from a different neighborhood.
No, they know it's his home. He's a member of the community, right? If there were a homeless white man in Detroit having a mental break, same situation, what do you think the chances are he'd be shot? A lot better, right?
Higher, yeah.
So that's why I think the media narrative of pushing the race issue when it comes to our relationship with our police is not
class-based.
It's not the way to go.
No, that's a really great conversation to have because of the fact that, like, yeah, class plays a really, really big issue in this. And I think class does supersede race. But in the microcosm of that class, I still feel like based on data and everything you see, skin color does extrapolate that in one way or the other, based on those scenarios, sure. But it's frustrating that because this isn't a national story, because of that extra piece that would, really make the story run wild, because of skin color. It's almost, like, I feel like a lot of times people who cuck for the establishment, not necessarily the establishment, but police and stuff like that, when they see a black man get killed, they immediately think, oh, well, what was he doing wrong? Mm-hmm. And if it's a white person that's killed, it's, well, there's just, he's just crazy.
Police interactions have become like weirdly tokenized, don't you think? Isn't it like, don't you think so?
It does, and it hurts the issue because
at least the way they're covered.
And it's like a snake eating its own tail in a sense, because of the fact that, like, regardless of race, we're seeing police botching their jobs time and time again. But when you add the race aspect to it, I feel like people who aren't black don't see it as an immediate threat, so they don't care. And people who are black who see it as happening to one of their own are just brushed off to the side by the people who don't see it as an immediate threat and don't care. And it just constantly just tumbles into itself. And we still see people being killed by police in scenarios where they were called to help.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying race doesn't matter at all. I just think that it's very, the way the media covers it overblows the racial aspect.
Yeah,
of
they cover it
the
as
incident that occurs, right?
race and don't talk about class. When it really comes down to it, it's class, and race is either a benefactor or a negative aspect of the interaction.
Depending on which narrative the media wants to push, right? So if you look at a more conservative, like we talk about this all the time, like when there's a mass shooting, right? Or when there's an incident of police killing somebody, I always look at it like, okay, what's conservative media hoping for, and what's liberal media hoping for? Liberal media during a mass shooting is, please let the guy be white, please let the guy be white, please let the guy be white, while conservatives are hoping, please let it be a Muslim,
an illegal immigrant.
Yeah, or something like that.
Illegal immigrant or a Muslim. Yeah.
And I feel like, and I'm glad you kind of talked me through this, because I think you articulated some things that I kind of missed during my little explanation, which is that I feel like the media does the same thing when it comes to police interactions and killings, right? They just it's a white guy. Who cares?
To where these stories, like, unfortunately, in a country like ours, where the majority of not unfortunately that a majority of the country is white, but unfortunately, a story that could be, explained or presented as a sort of, yeah, look, here's an example, police need to fucking do their jobs better. It doesn't have the zing to have the story run through all the national presses, so it just gets pushed off to the side. So regardless of what color this person was, this is a person obviously with the cry for help, and they got killed by police. They were suicided by police because of the fact that the officers didn't know how to handle somebody hurting no one but themselves with a knife. We have tasers. We hear a constant conversation about mental health crises, and maybe if there was somebody there that was able to deal with a suicidal victim versus cops who are just trained mostly to shoot people and put down the threat, this could be a person that survived.
That's where the police are.
Like, what was, yeah, exactly. Like, what was the outcome of this if the police didn't show up? The guy died.
Mm-hmm.
Someone calls for help, and they show up, and the guy dies. Where's the serve and protect in that?
Yeah, your taxpayer dollars literally just went to you. I'm not going to call this murder because I don't really know all the details of it yet, but like,
we still need body cam footage. That's a good caveat to add to it. Yeah,
it's at best like a negligent killing. You know what I mean?
Because maybe he did lunge at him, but the police were quick to say that no officers were injured, according to police.
That's the first thing they always say.
Right. But then at the same time, at the end of this article, it shows the Arizona crisis hotline number. And it's sad. It's really sad that somebody called the police in hopes to help their neighbor, and they see the police kill their neighbor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just, we really need to rethink policing in this country.
The police need more policing. Follow.
We need to have real conversations.
I always tell people to follow Audit the Audit on social media.
Yeah, or Police the Police.
Yeah.
And and it's if this story was given the same attention that other stories were, but this one doesn't have the same sort of knee-jerk reaction to it as other ones do, we might actually be able to see progress. Because if this story had the same type of legs as, like, what was his name? Something Blake. The one guy who had the knife and he was getting in his car and he was shot.
Minneapolis, Jacob Blake?
Yeah, Jacob Blake. If this story had the same legs as Jacob Blake, and then you post this photo of just this white guy, this guy who looks like a majority of the country, and you go, look, police killed him when he had a cry for help, you might get a lot more white people going, oh, fuck, yeah, our police do suck.
Mhm.
It sucks that it has to come down to that. And I think that's the issue.
That was really my point when I talked about the race aspect, is like the fact that it's just used as a meaningless weapon when it comes to
for clicks.
this particular topic, right? Like I could just see like a Fox News, or I would even go worse than Fox News, like a Breitbart on one of those like super far right publications. See, cops kill white people too. You know what I mean? Like, just the way race is used in these fucking police narratives is so cringe. It's so gross.
Well, fuck those guys. They would be at the cross of Jesus Christ being killed and saying, well, he should have just obeyed the law.
If he wasn't brown,
you know, if he just didn't fucking practice on the Sabbath.
Jesus was white.
Yeah, it's blonde-haired, brown-haired man with white skin in the middle of the Middle East.
Stop looking at me, white Jesus.
But yeah, it's frustrating to me where it's like these stories get brushed under the rug and it just continues to add fuel to the fire of the whole police conversation.
I'm with you, man. You ready to bounce?
I think I'm ready to bounce. You ready to bounce?
I gotta piss so bad.
All right. Well, Libservative Podcast is found on all social media and podcast platforms. Our website is podpage.com/Libservative. We can be found at Libservative on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at LibservativePod. And you can find our transcripts at libservative.podcast or libservativepodcast.wordpress.com. Our TikTok videos can be found at Libservative Podcast. And you can reach out directly at libservativepod@gmail.com. Subscribe today. Give us a rating. Takes you a couple seconds. Go on there and make it as creative as possible, as long as it has 5 stars. And we'll read it on the show and give you a shout out. Tell your friends where you heard this riveting conversation from your good friends, Dan and Corey.
These two racists. Yeah.
No, not me.
Not to
they're talking about brown professors and
somebody's gonna pull that for sure.
It'd probably be me.
Yeah. Not to I didn't want to forget that obviously next week we have Thanksgiving. We are not going to be doing our regular live stream here on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, but what we will have is a special guest interview that Corey and I will be recording sometime next week. We've got a couple of gentlemen that we've been meaning to talk to for a long time. We do plan to get one of them. So please look for us in the.
Who's it gonna be? Find out next week.
One of them is a brown guy. So maybe look.
He attended Brown University, or he's actually brown, Dan?
You'll have to wait and find out.
You'll have to wait and find out.
Yeah, look for the YouTube video possibly, but also download the podcast. It should be a fun conversation. We're going to talk about a certain voting demographic in this country with one of them. And then the other one, we're basically just going to bullshit with. So it's been a good run up to this Thanksgiving. We love you. He's been Corey Walsh.
He's been Dan Griffin.
This has been Libservative. And we are out of here.
Peace.